Hello, dear maritime community. My name is Uli Selbach. I'm the Business Unit Director for the Maritime and Technology Fairs of Hamburg Messe, and I welcome you to the new edition of the SMM Industry Talks. And I'm very pleased that I have a special guest with me today, Dr. Reinhard Lüken, who's the Managing Director of the German Shipbuilding and Ocean Industries Association, VSM. Herzlich willkommen, lieber Reinhard.
Uli, many thanks for having me today.
One key reason why we have Reinhard with us today, he's a very relevant member of the advisory board of SMM, and also he brought out the 10-point plan of the maritime industry policy for Europe, and that's one part we want to talk about today. Reinhard, we just had the Munich Security Conference, and we just actually learned yesterday that the Trump administration is planning to pull out of the European defense. So what is the challenge for the European maritime industry in regards to this?
This is a interesting question. I think we all need to digest, first of all, what has been happening yesterday. It might not come as a total surprise, but still, are we prepared for the new geopolitical conditions that we are facing? So with regard to what does it mean for the German maritime industry, I think we simply have to prepare ourselves for our future pathway. Whatever the circumstances may be, taking into account that the world is going to get somewhat tougher. This is the reason why we have produced this 10-point plan, which of course is mainly aiming at the German election, so that when we have a new parliament, when we have new players around, that they sort of have a guidance what we as industry believe would be the necessary things to do. So what is the content of the 10-point plan? Basically, it's a concept, how we chart a really ambitious and clear growth path, growth course for the sector. So there's all the components, all the factors that we need in order to embark on growth.
May I come back to what the Trump administration is doing now? For one thing, I remember very well, Reinhard, that you have been always pushing to look at the geopolitical impacts for the maritime industry. So this is not coming as a surprise to us. Do you have the impression that in Europe, at the Commission, also in the German government, there has been a plan for what will be happening now with Trump pulling out of, let's say, European NATO?
No, frankly speaking, I think we have lost 4 years during the Biden administration to really prepare for a case that is now on the table. So are we prepared? I would say no. And you can see that also in the whole discussion here in Germany on the Zeitenwende, which has been a big speech of the Chancellor right after the Ukraine war started, or at least the second phase of the Ukraine war started. Has it been thoroughly implemented? My answer would be not really. So there are a lot of things where I would say we have not been fast enough. I think the situation now is really a huge challenge for Europe, not only for lots of other places in the world as well, but for Europe in particular. Discussions on Greenland, who would have thought that would come up again? Of course, we need to have a European plan. How do we strengthen our military side, but in particular also, how do we strengthen our capacity to produce military armament? Have a European industry capacity idea. And by the way, when it comes to shipbuilding, it's very important. We are still in a fairly sound situation with our abilities, with our capabilities, with our capacities also, compared to the US. And I think the Americans are also waking up to the challenge that they have on this geopolitical landscape. So maybe shipbuilding is actually an area where we can connect to the objectives that also the new American administration has.
And I mean, you are sitting here because you are the managing director of the VSM. I'm sitting here because I'm the director of the Maritime Fairs at Hamburg Messe, and maritime is our world. And what we see sometimes in Germany, that we feel that we're not really on the top agenda of German politics or European politics with the maritime agenda. And you, with your colleagues from the other industry associations, are thriving to change this. Looking now at the critical infrastructure, I mean, we're seeing that there are pipelines being destroyed. We are seeing that there are cables being destroyed. We see the threat for offshore wind farms, and so on. Is Europe ready to face these threats that are happening now?
No, Europe is not ready now. But nevertheless, don't underestimate it, because it's always the most important step. It's understanding that you have a challenge. I think this is a major development. Europe has come to understand how important the maritime industry is, not only for transport. Of course, we have been discussing how to get to net zero in shipping for lots of in lots of fora. But the rest, maritime industry is about much more than just transport and logistics. As you said, renewable energy offshore, these huge plans that member states have to expand offshore wind. How much capacity you need for that, how much hardware. And you mentioned then the critical infrastructure on the sea. Who would have ever discussed that 5 years ago? Nobody around knew that basically 95% of all data around the world is traveling through sea cables. Nobody knew that. Somebody has to put the sea cable where they are. Somebody has to maintain them. Somebody has to protect them. All of that was not an issue in public debate 5 years ago. For us, that also means there's a big market waiting for us. And of course, on the navies, it's evident that, like for other areas in the defense sector, we need to really speed up and face the new realities.
I'm looking now at the naval shipyards, at the navies. Do the European shipyards have enough business to keep the technology also up in naval shipbuilding? Because it's important, because they need to plan also for the future, that it's worth building those frigates, corvettes, or a submarine. What's the situation there?
Yeah, for the time being, I think European shipyards, but equipment makers too, are quite well occupied. So we enjoy a good business environment. But is this enough? In our plan, we believe that it is not enough. We need to enhance investment. We need to build more. That's why I said at the beginning, it's a growth path that we want to embark on. You know, look back the last 20 years, or maybe even more, our market share has declined, but also our output has declined. And more than half of our shipbuilding output over the last 20 years was lost. So if you look ahead, if we don't change course, we will not even have another 20 years. So this is exactly why we need to put these investment forward, so that we can really turn around this long-term trend and then do both sides. That's extremely important in order to be efficient. On the military side, yes, sure, and it's a separate market, but also on the commercial side. But at the end of the day, maybe two different markets and different ways of logics behind, but it's one industry ecosystem. We take the same graduates from universities. Our educational system is training all these people, and it doesn't matter which direction they go afterwards. So we really have to nurture the whole ecosystem. In the US, the ecosystem is basically nurtured by the Navy only, and they pay a high price for that. So we are still in a better position to make this going well.
It's nice to hear also some good news when I look at the future of the European shipbuilding and supplier industry. Now, we talked a lot about geopolitics, about security and defense, but the 10 points, they are more about it. I mean, it's also about artificial intelligence. It's about where do actually the people come from, the fight for talents.